Okay, I'm Joel Swager, and we're here at Reno 2023 last air races, standing next to Dreadnought, and we're going to take a look at some of the things that I know about it. Dreadnought Race 8, big number 8. The door right next to it is our oil tank, and so Dreadnought with the big engine and all the weight, we try to put as much stuff in the tail as we can, which is why the oil tank is far back here. Also, there's no room for it because it pretty much, the engine's up against firewall. So what's kind of cool is this is a standard Seafury oil cap, just like you'd see on the Centaurus airplane. Goes in there like that. Dipstick, just like a normal Seafury, it's in there. Big difference though, this thing holds 30 gallons of oil, so that's a little different than what you find on a stock Seafury.
What's a stock?
Yeah, about 13 gallons. It's a pressurized oil tank, and so it uses air pressure to help move the oil uphill. The oil tank actually sits below the level of the engine, and so it's a little bit of a disadvantage in some cases if you're relying on just a pump to suck the oil, but with air pressure it helps push the oil to the engine. It gets the air pressure from the scavenge pumps on the engine, returning all the oil. That air pressure also pressurizes a fuel tank for transferring fuel, and that's a standard Seafury thing as well. If we go over here and we look at the wings, we've got Seafury looking ammo doors and gun bay doors. This, of course, doesn't have the blisters like a stock Seafury. And in this wing, we have 3 tanks, 1, 2, 3, and they hold our spray bar water. You have about 28 gallons of spray bar water, and we'll use all of that in about 8.5 minutes. Keep the engine cool. That sprays over the engine oil coolers. Seafury ailerons.
Does it still have the folding wings?
Yep, it's a folding wing, all stock folding wing airplane. We fold it. Every time we fly it back at home, we kind of leave them down here because we've got some extra hoses and stuff that run through the wing fold area. Seafury ailerons. This is one of the neatest features of a Seafury in that it's a spring tab aileron system. So the stick is directly hooked to the tab on the aileron. The tab drives the aileron via a torsion bar. So no matter what speed you're going, there's no change in aileron stick force. And it's kind of technology that came out towards the end of World War II. Some of the American airplanes had it, some of the late Hellcats and Bearcats, and then this would be the British equivalent of that, and it's the next best thing till they got to hydraulic flight controls where they had to power them. But this is all manual to the cockpit, spring tab ailerons. If you look out across the Dreadnought wing, you can see it's smoothed over pretty well. We've got all the rivets and panel lines bondoed in an effort to keep drag down. Over the years, some of that has, some hard flying has taken its toll on it, but it's still looking pretty good.
2 days.
So come around the front. We've got just a couple of the protrusions on the bottom of the wing. This is a vent for, this has a wet outer wing panel. And we can run fuel or water in there. It holds about 80 gallons. And depending on what we're doing, we'll change what load we use in the wings. That's a vent for that. We've got a single vent for our spray bar water system protruding out the bottom there. It uses just a little bit of ram pressure to help with that. You look out across the front of the wing. Obviously, the gun barrel panel is smoothed over in an effort to minimize drag. And then what looks normal on this airplane isn't normal for a Seafury, and that is it has an oil cooler on this side of the wing as well. the engine is producing quite a bit more heat, so we have to cool it. It's the exact same look and features of a stock one. It's just, instead of being on one side, we've also got it on the right side.
Is that the spray bar in front of it?
Yeah, and so this is our spray bar here, and during a race we will spray water over the oil coolers. It's not that we couldn't cool them without water, but it allows us to close the door back here and minimize air drag and cool it. So that's where that 28 gallons of spray bar water is spraying. It's spraying half of it on this side and half of it on the other side. There's a couple different styles of Seafury gear. This is kind of has a lightweight landing gear with a single strut, and the brakes that all of these airplanes use. Dreadnought is modified F102 wheel and brake, and it's a hydraulic operated brake versus a Seafury originally had a pneumatic drum brake and an air compressor and pneumatic system, and we've gone away from that with a more traditional hydraulic brake.
That's a big gear. Is it pretty draggy?
It's not high drag. The high drag thing is the flaps, and there has 80 degrees of flaps, and so when they're out, it looks like they're pointed straight down. They're not really very big as far as some airplanes might be compared to it, but they're effective and they're high drag. And so then the biggest thing when you look at Dreadnought on what's different about it is the cowling and the engine. So it's got a Pratt & Whitney R4360. This engine's a combination of a Dash 59 and a Dash 63. Each one kind of had some advantages on their parts and the configuration, supercharger size, prop spline size, cylinder, exhaust flange style, and so we've taken the things from each of those that were best for us. The propeller is a Skyraider Aero Products propeller. And it works out well for us, especially with the May Day we had on Tuesday, in that the propeller operates totally independently of the engine and the engine oil. So as long as it's turning, it's generating its own pressure, and it has a regulator that's built into the back of the prop. And so when we had the engine failure, I was still able to control the prop, and I was able to reduce drag. A ham standard is controllable only as long as there's oil pressure to the engine. So if they lose oil or oil pressure, the prop actually goes to a flat pitch and it's extremely high drag. And that's an advantage we have with this propeller for air racing. If you look out at the flame shield, you can see it's got 7 exhaust stacks. And so it's 28 cylinders, 7 exhaust stacks each side. Each one is 2 cylinders coupled together. So the cowling, instead of a standard three latches on the side, it's basically a Seafury style cowling. It's extended. It's got 5 latches that hold it together that are a stock type setup. The scoop over the top is a modification, and in an effort to be the most efficient, you want the air to turn as few times as possible. So a stock Seafury with the air comes in from the leading edge of the wings, turns 90 degrees to come in, then it has to come in up, and it turns a bunch of times before it gets to the engine. This makes one turn 90 degrees into the carburetor, so it's a much higher efficiency, and it gets a lot of ram rise. It's in real clean air, and it works well. We damaged it the other day though, in our qualifying run, so normally it's not pooched up and cracked in the front, but we'll get back home and fix it. So the spinner on it is a custom-made spinner, and it's the same size as a stock Seafury spinner, but of course now we've got 4 blades instead of 5, and the direction of rotation is different, so the blade angle cut out is opposite direction. It's a very user-friendly spinner. We can have it off in about a minute. It's got 8 latches that are half-turn latches. When you turn those latches a half turn, the spinner comes right off. You can work on the prop. You can take the prop off real easy. Removing the prop is really easy compared to a ham standard. There's no oil mess. It's all self-contained. It's pretty lightweight, and so it's a user-friendly design. If we have to work on anything in the front of the engine, we can just take the spinner off, prop off, nose bowl off, and get to things pretty easy. So pretty much same thing on this side of the wing. Look across the front, we've got the second oil cooler over here with spray bars. That's all fed from the tanks on the right side. We do gear at 170 knots. Yeah.
Is your biggest limitation the doors?
Yeah, they are. The doors, and the main gear doors are pretty good, and the inner gear doors are good. The tail gear doors are good. It's this little door. This is the problem door. Every once in a while, those will get knocked loose. There's stories of Seafuries coming down the chute on race day with the gear coming out at release speed and nothing damaged, so they're actually a pretty tough gear. But you can overload some of the hydraulics and the mounts in the wheel well that the hydraulics attached to aren't as strong as they could be. So that'd probably be more limiting than the gear doors themselves. We got one pitot tube out across the front, standard British pitot tube. We haven't changed anything there. We've got the same thing on this side. We have the cap off of it right now, but we run water in the outer wing panel for cylinder spray. We've actually got spray nozzles just behind the spinner that spray water on the cylinders. It's real sensitive to cylinder head temperature, and with the setup that it has now with this tail and this propeller, cylinder head temperature would be a limiting factor. We wouldn't be able to go fast at all if we didn't have water to spray on the cylinders, and so we're consuming cylinder spray water at a really high rate. We'd go through about 35 gallons in a 8.5 minute race, and that keeps the temperatures under control. This 4360 is being a late model engine and late in the development of piston engines, has a high CHT red limit. So its red line is 273 degrees, which is way higher than almost anything else, and the idea is to not ever be there. And they established that red line with a lot of trial and error, and if we get there, we know it's going to be a problem. So anyway, that's what our cylinder spray water controls. You can see the indicator pin on the top of the wing. That's telling us that the wing is not locked. We were folding the wings up and down the other day and didn't lock them, so not unusual. For an operation, you might spread the wings with electric hydraulic pump and turn the pump off before the locks engage. After you start the engine, you look out. When the locks are down, it's just a second way of knowing that the engine-driven hydraulic pump is working. And that's really the only indication you have that the wing is down and locked is those pins. And then, of course, when you're in the cockpit, the handle, you got to make sure the handle's locked as well. These panels here, we don't have anything today in these tanks. If we needed more cylinder spray water volume, we have tanks that'll go in here and could occupy that space and get us about another 18 gallons if we needed it. We've got a high pressure oxygen bottle underneath this panel in the normal ammo bay there. And just forward of that, we've got fuel. We've got 33 gallons. It's called a spar tank because it sits between the spars, and it's pressurized with the same air pressure as the oil tank, and it automatically transfers that fuel to the main tank. Main tank's about 150 gallons. So it does not have a lot of fuel. Well over 300 gallons an hour, between 300 and 400, kind of depending on what we're trying to do. Yeah. So a stock Seafury would have, for fuel tank configuration, would have a spar tank on each side. We didn't look at it on the other side, but we've got the other spar tank used as an ADI tank. ADI is a water alcohol mixture that helps cool the induction charge so that you can run more horsepower. You can run the fuel flow leaner and make horsepower. So we've got 33 gallons of ADI capacity in the right spar tank, and where the oil cooler sits on the right side on a stock Seafury would be 18 gallons of fuel, and we don't have that available because there's an oil cooler there. So we've just got left spar tank and a main tank, and it uses it a lot. We typically land with between 60 and 80 gallons on board, and it works out, but there's not a lot of reserve. You can't have the power up or you go through it fast. We got Wyatt here. Say hi. Hi.
Hi.
Good.
Can I clean Dreadnought?
Yes, you can clean Dreadnought.
Okay.
Okay, you want to take Wyatt? Okay, go get some rags. Let's clean Dreadnought.
Oh, and Wyatt.
In a very British fashion, it has a step that's called a stirrup, and the stirrup retracts and extends, and everybody has flown with the stirrup down. It has a very high red line. It's not published, but we know it's high because everyone's gone fast with it out on accident. That's just closed with the handle here, so easy. Easy up, down.
Can we clean Dreadnought?
Yes. You want to start with the tail gear?
Let's go. Let's go.
Okay.
Go get the rags.
Hey, go see Jim. They're in the trailer.
No.
You want to go inside?
Go. Yes.
Okay. Hang on just a sec. We'll be back. Okay, this way. So that's the normal step to get up on the wing, and then also this step, which is closed at the moment, is a step to get in the back cockpit. And there's actually a little lever inside there. You can lift that step up and down. And so whoever sits back there has to put the step up and secure it up. They're on their own to do that. The pilot can't do any of that for them. The other step on the side, which you need to get in, is controlled by the gear handle. And so when the gear handle is up, the step comes up, and the gear handle's down, the step is down. There's cases of the gear handle not having the right lock mechanisms on it, and the air loads on the side of the fuselage pulling the step down, which put the gear handle down. So anyway, there's a secondary lock on the gear handle because those two things being interconnected has been a problem before. Same thing when you're looking up the side of Dreadnought, you can see the 7 exhaust stacks, and you can see the way that they're positioned is they help accelerate air through the cowling. They are pulling it from right around the exhaust stacks. They are pulling and making a pretty good low pressure area right behind the back of the stainless flame shield, and it's a really efficient design and a way to pull more air through the cowling. It's the same way a stock Seafury does it. Some of the things that we could look at on the canopy here, we can see this canopy's locked. It's got a pin engaged. To unlock this canopy, we would push this in, turn it 90 degrees. That'd lock the pin in. Same thing with the front canopy. So before we flew, we would have to push that pin in and turn it 90 degrees. Otherwise, the canopy wouldn't close. So that's kind of a pre-flight thing when you're getting in, is to make sure that pin is in and all the way locked. Otherwise, when I get the canopy closed and the pin sticks back out and then the canopy's stuck shut. So you kind of got to be careful that it's been secured properly. Looking back across the tail, we're pretty much stock here. This is a dual control Seafury, which you can tell obviously with the whole second canopy and cockpit. And so the dual control airplanes have a logger horizontal. It's extended about 18 inches, 20 inches or so from a Mark 11 horizontal. That had to do with them needing to expand the center of gravity range on a dual control airplane with having a second person sitting so far back. The original, the horizontal and the single seats just wasn't big enough to do it. So this airplane has a long horizontal, and it really makes it very stable and good elevator authority. Standard Seafury rudder, same thing as the ailerons. It has a torsion bar, so very light rudder forces throughout the whole speed range. The vertical stabilizer has zero offset in it, so going from the British engine that turns one direction to the American engine that turns the other direction works out easy because there's no offset change in the vertical. But it just has a little more rudder input required on takeoff until it kind of gets up to speed, but it doesn't take much rudder trim when you change speeds, so that's a nice feature. We've got a handy can that's just catching anything that might be draining out of the engine. We've got a lot of drains that are all interconnected together. They all feed a common drain out the back. It's just a way of trying to keep it tidy and clean. And we got to remember to take that off before you run it, or it's messy. Same thing this side. You can see the long horizontal.
He was still doing it when I first got into the camp.
And we hit a bird a couple years ago, so we still got a scratch in the paint, and I think we're going to keep that in there just for fun now. The tail wheel in this is this one kind of still has an original configuration, so right now it's turned around backwards, but this is a cable guard, so this would normally be on the front and landing on the aircraft carrier. This would keep the wire from getting caught on the tail gear and ripping the tail gear off, and it would hopefully push the wire down. We're running a 505 tire and a custom-made wheel, just because the original British Dunlop wheels were getting just a little bit difficult to be purchased and available in the US, and so that makes it an off-the-shelf tire, and you can get them any day of the week, so it's a little more user-friendly. So there we've got the control lock in. You can see it's kind of a unique way of doing it. The forward cable is attached to the rudder pedals, clamps around the stick and then back to the seat, and you can add tension to the cables by lifting the seat up or running the rudder pedal adjustment forward. Okay, so we are in Dreadnought looking forward, and we're gonna just look around. We're gonna start on the left side and just work our way all the way around. So over here, we've got pretty minimal controls. Moving over, we've got our trim console. Rudder trim and elevator trim. There's no aileron trim. That's only externally adjustable, and it's okay. It doesn't need it. Once the airplane's been adjusted, it really doesn't have any aileron trim changes throughout the speed range. Moving forward, we've got throttle quadrant. So the big handle is the throttle handle. Got the prop handle. And we've got the mixture control. Mixture has basically 3 positions. We've got idle cutoff, we've got auto lean, and then all the way up is auto rich. So anytime we're operating it at takeoff or landing or high power, it operates in auto rich. Cruise and low power, you can go to auto lean, and then to shut it down, or if you need to manual lean on the ground, your idle cutoff, or just off of idle cutoff. Propeller control, that goes directly out and across the engine and to the prop. There's a lever on the back of the prop on the regulator, and it hooks directly up to that, so there's no prop governor or halfway back on the engine or anything like that. Down below here we've got the gear selector, currently in the down position, and the safety lever for the gear. And so before the gear can be selected up, first the safety lever has to be raised, then the gear handle goes up. And right above the gear handle we've got the flap lever, and it's got 4 positions all the way up: takeoff, max lift, and full down. And full down is 80 degrees. There's the indicator that'll show you where the flap position is at. Going back over here to the left side console is the hydraulic pressure gauge, and it's a 1,800 pound system, so it's a little higher than a lot of other airplanes, and that's what it runs at. On the panel next to it we've got emergency air pressure. That's our blow down bottle pressure. You can see right now it's about 1,700 or so, and if we had to blow the gear down, we'd be using up that supply. Looking over here on the left side of the instrument panel, we have our oil cooler doors, and the Mustang guys would recognize these switches as coolant door switches, and they operate the same way. So they can be operated to manually close the door, manually open the door, or put it in automatic, and it uses its own temperature sensing element to move the door position to maintain the temperature. So when we're racing, we have to manually close the doors, and when they're all the way closed, then we can turn on spray bar water and let the water do the work, and that decreases drag. When they're in automatic, the guards go up and hold them there. Looking next to those, we've got the mag switches. So this is a late model 4360 with 4 magnetos versus some of the early ones that had 7, and so we are running 4 switches for each magneto, and we check those on run up. Typically there's not a lot of RPM drop, and usually you can see a torque pressure drop is a little better indication, and it's about 1.5 to 2 pounds of torque pressure drop per mag. This one we have a booster coil switch or ignition vibrator on a separate switch, so during the start sequence we have that switch on to operate that to help start it. Standard radio package, we've got gear selector, our gear indicator, and gear warning light. So if we've got the throttle back too far and the gear's not down, that red light will illuminate. Other than that, we've got a position indicator for each main and tail gear, and we've got red lights when they're in transit. And if a light bulb is burned out, you can actually switch lamps to a different set of light bulbs that are all internal to into that indicator unit. Looking down, we've got rudder pedals. So I'm pretty tall, so they're adjustable. This wheel right here rolls them forward or rolls them back. It's easy for me to know my position. It's all the way forward all the time, so no problem finding it. You can see maybe that the pivot point for it is in the center, so when the gears are in their center position, the rudder pedals are actually further apart, versus when they're run all the way forward, the rudder pedals actually start to come together just a little bit. So guys that are normal height will typically put it so the pedals are as far apart from each other more than anything, just to have more control over that. Above the rudder pedals there's a stirrup, and that keeps your foot on the rudder pedal if you're doing any maneuvers where you'd be 0 or negative G's and your feet are trying to come off the pedals, that just holds them in pretty nicely. Kind of a standard thing on British airplanes. Looking back at the main instrument panel, well, first we can see we've got a British spade grip in it. This has the original grip in it, and we have the switching configured in this so we can operate our radios from each switch, and we'll typically set it up for talking to race control on that upper switch and talking to our crew chief on the secondary switch, so we can listen to both and talk to both really easily. We're not having to flip-flop between anything else. Instruments on the instrument panel are very standard as far as the bottom half, and when we get into the top half, we've got everything that's pertinent to racing, and it's laid out very well. So the ADI pressure and the induction temperature are working together in that the ADI is controlling your induction temperature, and you can verify that it's turned on with ADI pressure. There's a switch for them right next to it, so that's a package deal right there. And then the next package deal is these three. We've got cylinder head temp, cylinder spray pressure right next to the switch. The two in the center are indicating the top one, torque pressure. You can compute how much horsepower you're making. If you have torque pressure and RPM and you multiply it by a number out of the book, I don't remember off the top of my head, you can quickly calculate horsepower. And this engine is rated to 3,800 horsepower, and for the most part we try to keep it in that range. Over here we've got another package deal, oil temp and oil spray bar pressure right next to the switch. And so when you turn the switch on, you're watching for pressure to come up, and we're watching oil temp at the top here. And then we've got standard oil pressure, and then we've got position indicators for the oil cooler doors. So when we're over here running these switches, and before or during a race we're running them to closed, we're verifying they're closed here. If we're running them in automatic, it can tell us, it can give us an idea on how hot how hard the engine's working. If the doors are hanging wide open on a cool day, probably be an indication that you might have an engine problem. And typically they run pretty well close to closed. Normal operating, this thing doesn't have any trouble controlling oil temp. So looking back on the right side of the instrument panel now, we've got standard manifold pressure. We're at 5,000 feet today, and we're only showing about 26 inches, so that sounds about right. TAC, fuel pressure. Oil pressure down here is actually not engine oil pressure. This is oil pressure in our oil coolers. The way that the water flows across the oil coolers can cool the oil too much, and actually the oil's too cold in the cooler from too much water. It'll start bypassing the oil cooler. The hot oil will go around it because the cold oil in there is thick and moving slow, and we would see that by seeing a high, we call it bypass pressure. If that was up around 80 or 100, it would probably mean we've got too much water flowing across the oil coolers, and we'd be better off turning the water off to try to get hot oil through them. Up here we've got canopy jettison. So if in the event we had to decide to bail out of it, red T handle gets pulled. You can see it's got a little breakaway wire on it, and it's got spring-loaded jettison system that jettisons the canopy and canopy rails, and there's a bailout door. On the left side, this whole door here bails out, so you could actually get out quite a bit easier. It's would be a quick way of getting out. Canopy crank is pretty standard. There's a locking feature here so that you can just pull it forward or not. That holds the pin, keeps the pin from engaging in a hole, and when you want to close it, you just turn that anywhere to the side and you can engage a pin in a hole. But on the ground, lock the pin out just like that. Working our way to the right side now. If we start here in the front, we've got our emergency gear and flap selector, and those are pneumatically operated gear blowdown systems, and so we looked at blowdown pressure earlier, and if we had to activate that, we'd pull safety pin on the side and move the lever forward to put the gear down. If the gear was blown down, you can't get it back up. The way it's sequenced, the hydraulic components, it's going to be stuck down, so you really have to commit to a landing. If you put the gear down, going around it could be a problem. We've got a standard Seafury fuel selector handle, and we can't select individual tanks. They all feed into the main tank with air pressure, and you can select on or off. And so you can turn the fuel off to the engine, and here's our air pressure gauge. That's telling us if we are, it tells us that all the fuel caps are on and tight, and oil tank caps. And so we can verify that fuel is going to transfer, and in this airplane with the oil tank down low, it helps us know that the oil is being pushed up to the engine. Hidden here, we've got my gloves. And we always keep rags because it's a radial engine. When you start it up, it oils the canopy, and sometimes you got to wipe it down. So it's a great spot for tucking rags. They're tucked here behind our drop tank handles. This would be an alternate way of changing where the air pressure goes. If you wanted to operate drop tanks, you would have to move these handles to the drop tank position, and that would pressurize the drop tanks and feed them into the main tank. And we don't run drop tanks on Dreadnought, so it's a great spot to tuck some spare rags for when you oil the canopy on start, which happens. Looking over on the right side, we've got a very nice and easy switch panel layout. So we've got a generator master switch, start and prime, and boost pump. Those are, your main ones to go to. We have some fuel transfer lights here. If we were using the wet wings to transfer fuel, this would tell us when the pressure was going away, since we don't have quantity indication. And then we've got a low fuel light. And you can be looking left out the cockpit. When that light comes on, you definitely see it. It lights up and you notice, and that light comes on when we get down to about 100 gallons on the main tank. So it's not unusual to land Dreadnought with a low fuel light on. It is using a lot of fuel. We only have quantity indication on the main tank on this, and it is in imperial gallons, and so we just kind of deal with that, and it's just an original way of doing it. These are our switches to transfer fuel out of the wet wings that go with those lights, and then we've got just all the standard functions here. And circuit breakers, we get back here, we've got aux hydraulic and pre-oil. And so we use aux hydraulic, kind of like a backup hydraulic pump, and we would use that before we blow the gear down. It operates like the hand pump does. We skip by the hand pump. If we go back over here, hidden underneath the seat belt, red and white candy stripe thing is the hand pump, and it's easy enough to use, but definitely don't want to put the gear up or down that way. So we use the electric pump to raise and lower the wings on the ground, and we might even do it for doing gear checking, swinging the gear at annual too. Next, that's pre-oil. It's a radial engine. We haven't run it in a while. We'll pre-oil it. In a while, that'd be like a week. If it's been a month or more, we probably won't use this onboard pre-oil system. We use a hot pre-oiler, and that just does a better way of getting more oil further into the engine and hot, and it gets does a better job of pre-oiling. But we have this one here. That's a good option. If we look back a little bit more, we've got high pressure oxygen, and we fly the airplane with oxygen every time we fly it. It has exhaust close to the canopy. The canopy does not seal that great, and if you fly it too long without oxygen, you will definitely be feeling the effects of that. So standard to operate it with oxygen. And we look just a little further back there, a little hard to see, we've got the wing fold selector. They put that out of the way on purpose. And you get the wings down and locked, and you verify they're locked, and you don't want to bump that while you're flying. So it's kind of hard to get to when you're sitting in the seat, and that's okay. There's our Hobbs meter. Looks like we've got 328.2 hours on it, and a lot of it at full throttle. These are hard hours. We're looking out Dreadnought. It has excellent visibility. It's like cheating. You can see out of it so good. And when we're racing too, we've got a ball right in the center, right in the middle. It's huge. So we aren't looking down. We don't have a yaw string. We've got a great big slip indicator, and that's very helpful. Great visibility out of the cockpit, and easy to spot pylons and traffic, and not having a little canopy is nice. That takes us through most of the cockpit. Good view of the wings. And over there, you can see the lock pins are up. Those are easy to spot on both sides. So that's our tour of Dreadnought. I think we covered cockpit and stuff, and I won't tell you how much power we ran, what the temperatures were, but we do actually try to keep them all within book power ratings. It's rated 3,800 horsepower every takeoff, in a C-124, and it's a lot of horsepower. It's typically been a very reliable way of making horsepower. This year would be the exception to that.